Two filmmakers are highlighting movements like Black Lives Matter, climate change, and a whole lot of other issues. In a new documentary this morning, we're live with the directors and producers of The Day I Had to Grow Up. Laura Pelligrini and Stefano join us via Zoom. Thank you so much for being with us. What struck me at least, and I don't know whether it struck you as well, but what struck me as unusual with last year's demonstrations was the length of time that protesters stayed out in the streets. Was that surprising to you?
I think it was, and I think one of the aspects that we were thinking about just prior to this interview was how this generation has used social media. You know, there's no turning back. It's something that other generations have never had before, and you see it sort of in the blackout. The blackout on Instagram and the blackouts on Facebook, their ability to organize through social media happens extremely fast. And so that ability galvanizes them to be able to connect in a much more rapid sense. To go back to your question, I think also the length of time was an effect of the trauma that happened, and also the fact that people were not able to be out of their houses for so long. It was a culmination of also the COVID restrictions with that. So I think that's a very honest answer.
Yeah, so given that, Laura, I'm wondering if it was not so much an interest in social justice, because COVID-19 is a very unusual event. I mean, do you think that this might be a trend for future protests, regardless of what they're about, or was that just a one-off, largely because of the pandemic?
You know, that's a great question. It's something that we highlight too in the documentary. You know, these youth activists, they're at such a critical cross-section where they do have all these social media tools at their disposal. And I think that if you examine a cause very fully and you feel very connected to it, and you know that you're on the same page with other activists that are like-minded with you, then you can rise above the trend of the day. And I can only hope that the activists who were involved in the protests last year were mindful of that. It's something that it's a recurring theme and a recurring motif in the documentary, so I'm glad that you brought that up.
Do you also think that the social media aspect, which certainly isn't going anywhere, might actually help bring real change? I'm thinking about the Parkland shooting kids. They very quickly and very much got the attention of political leaders. Now, none of us were really active in the 60s with the Vietnam War protests, especially you guys. I was closer, but that's another story. So I don't really know if those protests caught the attention of political leaders the way, for instance, the Parkland shooting incident did, or the protests following it did. Do you think that social media will actually help bring about more real change?
I think that it has a double-edged sword, right? You can learn about a topic or hear about a topic very quickly. But because the way that social media is set up, there's echo chambers where it already knows what you like. So you're already agreeing with people that you've already had an opinion established with. So in a sense, it polarizes people from coming together. And so there is that missing component of the physical interaction that is very necessary on the ground. I don't think social media has solved that issue yet. It's brought forward a loudspeaker for respective positions. But the real centrist perspective of people understanding each other has to happen still. We're still having that dialogue. Our society, the American society, is still having that dialogue. And so I think it has done some of the work, but it has a long way to go.
So if you had to just list one takeaway that you hope viewers of the documentary come away with, what would it be?
Well, the number one thing that I would say is to essentially watch documentaries. Our documentary, like The Day I Had to Grow Up, you notice every individual has a different precise specific topic, whether it's high student debt crisis, whether it's surviving Parkland, you start to step into the shoes of what it's like and to live that person's life. And in that moment, you can empathize with that person's life. The closer you become to the person, the further away you come from the agenda. And so that's the real aspect to changing. You only really change by empathizing with people and becoming compassionate to them as people, rather than an agenda that is forced upon you.
Yeah, and it's really important that these activists, they you know, the kids today, that they have a reminder of the obstacles that they still have yet to overcome. You know, they go into situations with such an idealized lens, but it's really important, like Stefano said, to build empathy and to see other kids going through those struggles, to know what it's like to bridge that gap between the demand for change and then actually making change happen. It's really important.
You might not agree with everything that they stand for, but you can begin to see why that they care passionately and why they stand for it. Thank you so very much. We appreciate your time.